All right, everybody, it is 7:01. I am going to open the October 2023 meeting of Jericho's Affordable Housing Committee. If we have any public joining us, we'll start with public comment, approve the minutes from September. We'll touch base on where we're at with Town Plan 2024. And then pick up our conversation on HOA Covenant reviews, DRB applicant reviews. And if we have time, we can start to introduce the topic of the Riverside form-based code for character-based zoning.
Striper at night.
Liaison updates, and then some other business and plan for our November meeting. We don't have any public comment. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our September.
Move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Eric. Do I have a second? I'll second. Thank you. Any discussion or edits, comments? Wayne, I would double check the spelling of Frederica's name.
Isn't it Frederica?
I think it's with A, not a C.
Copy.
I think the way that I've been doing it in my head is fried Eric. I know, but double check a signature on her email because
Oh, okay.
All right, so all those in favor of approving the minutes from September, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstain?
I abstain.
Thanks, Richard.
Let me just get down. We have SJ, Chuck, Stacy, Richard, Eric, Wayne. Anybody else?
That's it for right now.
Okay. Good.
All right, moving on to Town Plan 2024. Eric, you want to tell us where the Planning Commission is at?
I cannot give you a complete update because I was not at the meeting last week. However, at the meeting last week, it was to vote and approve that the current draft of the plan be forwarded to the select board, who would then review, make their comments, make suggestions for any changes or change on their own. And within, I think it's 4 weeks or 6 weeks, it will be put to a vote by the select board. And then if they approve it, it's the new plan. So if people have comments, questions, or changes, they got to go to the select board now.
So yes, the select board received the document on October 5th. They made notice of a hearing for November 6th. So that'll be the first of 2 hearings by the select board with the public. They have requested that all comments and edits continue to be sent directly to Linda.
The select board has?
And Linda and
Show some real involvement.
possibly the select board. I'm not sure who Linda's working with, but she's collecting all the documents and then working with David collecting all the edits, working with David to put those edits into a new draft. The select board had some discussion about, because the timeline is so tight and November 16th is coming up so closely, maybe trying to have an additional meeting so the 3 of them can talk about it and discuss some of the things that are in that draft. But for our purposes, I'm going through the draft and comparing it to all the recommendations that we have made. And then we'll be providing any of those recommendations again that perhaps didn't make it in for whatever reason, back to Linda. And then we'll, depending on how they operate, whether they do another meeting, whether it's just at the public comment, we'll go to the select board and make sure that they receive those comments. But in all fairness, I haven't looked at draft 3 yet. I've gotten like 3 pages in, so I don't know how much or how little the feedback there will be, other than underscoring points.
Linda's last.
Flash. BLA. Hi. SCH, I think. Rodrigo, how do you spell your name?
Which one?
Your first name?
KEA.
Not
Like
that.
fried rice with a K
That's
and
what
an
I.
E in the middle.
Oh, but it ends in E?
Yeah,
It ends
like
in
rice.
E.
Yeah,
Fried rice. See,
that's
I've
what my
been spelling
dorm
it
mate
wrong,
said.
too.
She said, I've got your spelling down. It's fried rice with a K.
I knew it was fried, but I thought it was A. Okay, fried rice.
With an E in the middle between the fried and the.
Oh, so I did get it right. So I've been spelling it FREDERIAA, right?
That's fried rice though. It's not fried rice.
Exactly.
But I really don't care. You know, I'm not one of these people that thinks that if you spelled somebody's name wrong, it's like a personal affront.
So anyway, my hope is to get those comments and that feedback to Linda by the end of the month. If anyone wants to help me with that, great. Like I said, I haven't looked at draft 3 yet to know how big of a lift it's going to be. But hope to get them to her by the end of the month so that the select board has a couple of weeks to take those comments and whatever kind of revisions into account as they prepare for their November 16th hearing. And then there'll be another comment period. Second hearing will either be the end of December or at the very latest January 4th, because our current town plan expires January 7th. So anything else? So I encourage you all to look at draft 3. Certainly make, hey Dave, certainly make your if you have your own comments, edits, concerns, suggestions, you're welcome to make them on your own through Linda. Or you can reach out to me and say, hey, we spent a lot of time on this, just want to make sure that you've got it flagged or whatever. Anything else on town plan before I close this?
So the next select board big meeting will be on the 16th of November.
That's the public hearing,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
That select board meeting.
And hopefully they'll have a meeting to discuss it among each other before that.
Yeah,
I'm sure they'll have several.
But at that point, they need to be presenting it as their plan.
yeah. And that was,
What's happened in the past is that they have not accepted it as their plan. They're just sort of watching it's like you're there providing testimony kind of to the planning commission because the select board hasn't accepted it yet. And then they end up accepting it without ever speaking with each other about it. And I'm hoping that will change.
well, Eric and Wayne discussed that at the select board meeting on October 5th and hoping to do just that. And they articulated exactly that on November 16th, they were on the hook to present it as their plan. So they needed to know it and believe in it.
That was at the October 5th meeting.
Yeah.
Which is the meeting that Wayne resigned.
Yep. Didn't watch the whole meeting, but I did watch that part. All right, anything else? All right, so I think the next 2 agenda topics are HOA covenant reviews and DRB applicant review and response. I think that there's going to be a lot of overlap here, but I want to look at them as two separate things. The HOA, and it may not be an HOA, it may be covenant, it may be bylaws, but the reason I think there'll be overlap is that we see with DRB applications, and you brought this up a couple of times now, that they will provide bylaws language or covenant language. And a lot of that language, in addition to in addition to something that current residents can look at their own HOAs, and this is kind of how we started on the conversation, and I think we need to keep this avenue open too. We all can look at any current bylaws or covenants that we are living under, and we can encourage our neighbors and local residents to kind of get involved in affordable housing and be more YIMBY, to look for exclusionary language, look for racist language, and kind of guide folks on how to do that. For DRB applicants who are coming in with fresh bylaws, I think that we should be making comments, especially when those rules go against the housing resolution and against our Declaration of Inclusion.
How can we make comments? How do you imagine doing that? I'm so unclear about what public comments are.
As am I. But we can provide, there's a couple of things I've been thinking about. And again, I think this is a conversation that we all should be having. We talked about providing I think Chuck, it was your idea, having kind of a 1 or 2 page that we can either ask Chris to deliver, or if he won't, then we can figure out a way to deliver to applicants when they're kind of in the sketch plan phase, or when they're coming to schedule a hearing, to provide them with just basic information, even if we haven't seen their application yet. So that's one place. So we're not necessarily testifying. There are times when we can submit a written comment or a written report to the DRB. If we review an application or see it, we don't even have to formally be asked. We can submit that comment, and that becomes part of their record. But I also am wondering, because this is something that I believe the Planning Commission is thinking a lot about too, because they're seeing in some of these covenants language that goes against the work that they're trying to do and the work that we're trying to do, and trying to figure out how to, I think they're investigating a little bit better, understanding the legal avenues and like what does it mean and how is it enforced and what role can or should the town have. And so is there a way for us to say, not just a list of stay away from this language, use this or whatever, is there a way for us, maybe with the Planning Commission, to be able to say, okay, there's 2 things that you should be thinking of when you're putting bylaws together. 1, only if it's absolutely necessary, and 2, that it be consistent with the regulations and laws, local, state. And so here's a checklist of things. And if you're inconsistent, then is it really necessary? If the answer is yes, you think a minimum of 2,000 feet is necessary, then tell me why. If you think it is necessary to not allow ADUs, then tell me why. If you think it's necessary to go against whatever this, I don't know, frontage regulation is and demand more, tell me why. And have an exercise, almost like a impact statement of, okay, we'll justify. I wanted you to acknowledge that you're asking this thing that goes above and beyond the goals of the town and is exclusionary. Not only acknowledge it, but then justify it. I don't know if we can ask that of them.
Well,
but,
I looked at the entire law, the Vermont law, about this.
Fried rice.
And it took me forever to find anything that said that they actually have to adhere to state law, which I believe they do. I mean, it's again, I think I said that before. It must be a simple legal question.
Yeah.
But in there, I found one article under Title 27, which is the Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act, and that's where it talks about this stuff. And it says that except as provided in subsections A and B of this section, no provision of this title invalidates or modifies any provision of any zoning, subdivision, building code, or other real estate use law, ordinance, or regulation. And the way I read that, in conjunction with A and B, it sounded to me like that meant that you can't really override other laws with your HOA covenant. I'm not totally sure, but that's the closest I got to finding anything that said that. Everything else was about how they make rules within an HOA and,
Mhm.
you know, who can collect fees, and it's like a huge amount of detail about that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
I think it may there's two issues. One is, what can we be asking of the HOAs? And then the other one is, to what extent can we, and through zoning, require that the individual lots be subject to all the zoning laws from that area, like if it's in a quarter acre zoning area and it's a 3 acre lot, then that lot should be subject to quarter acre zoning.
Well,
That's-
by definition, if it's in a quarter acre zoning, it is zoned for quarter acre. Now, the HOA may say we're only selling 1 acre lots. So what you're saying is the HOA cannot have a more restrictive
That's exactly.
zoning
it.
than what the
Right,
underlying zoning is. which
right, and I
makes-
think that's,
That's-
I'm
I
kind of
think that
interested, Eric, has to
exists.
say, because you're looking at it, I mean, you just read your own HOA.
Yeah.
What do you,
Well, at the time when I wanted to buy my house, sign this or you can't buy the house. So, which is
Yeah.
the case most of the time.
It's
Not
hard
here
to
and there.
change down the road. I mean, everybody can get together within an HOA and change stuff, but I think that's.
I don't know if it's unanimous or majority.
Majority, just mine.
I mean, do you support that idea that the individual lots should not be, the HOA should not be more restrictive than the underlying zoning?
Yes, of course.
I
That's what the
think
whole point of
that's-
zoning is.
Yeah, I think that's in here, in our
So I guess the
zone.
question
regs
is that
somewhere.
a legitimate zoning change?
I think
I
that's
don't
in
think
our
it's a
zoning
zoning
somewhere.
change. It's an HOA change. And it's a regulatory change on how you get approval for a subdivision, because this would only apply for a subdivision. That a subdivision approval note from the town of Jericho should state that an HOA cannot be more restrictive than the zoning in which it's stated, in which it's located. In other words, you can't go into a quarter acre place and say the HOA prohibits you from having less than a 1 acre lot, which would be more, a larger lot than what the zoning allows.
And does the town have the power to require that?
I think that's, yeah, I think that's already in here somewhere.
I haven't read the law, so I don't know, but
In the
Frederica,
town-
you're looking it up.
No, I mean, it was in, that's another, the question goes to our own zoning regulations, and what's already in there. And,
The zoning regulations, from my recollection, are silent on HOAs.
yeah, there was, I fell asleep yesterday when I was trying to find it.
You know, it's only 200 pages. It
Under
shouldn't be that
1013,
hard.
yeah, it was like, it was deep down in there.
Yeah,
But that's
Well, if
the
somebody has it
point,
open, they
right?
can do a quick control F and find it.
Well, I know it wasn't, I tried that. HOA was not in that, but yeah, I'll try to get to it again.
Or subdivision regulations or whatever, but
Yes,
essentially, if
exactly.
you're zoned for quarter acre, you can sell a full acre lot in there. But it should not be, if it is not structured, we as affordable housing should make a motion to the planning commission or the select board that no HOA restrict a lot to be larger than the minimum allowed lot size in the zone.
Right.
And is an HOA,
And can they do that?
It says here, all subdivisions shall comply with any and all applicable specific use standards in section 4.4. That's, and then I have to go back to section.
Yeah,
4.
so like an HOA
Can't,
can't
Just
subdivide
override.
to 1/8 acre lots when it's zoned for a quarter acre.
oh,
But an HOA can say you can't go smaller than an acre, because that's within that meets the minimum
can
quarter
private
acre.
parties make an agreement among each other not to do something?
Exactly. So it's not, it can't. Similarly, like it can't force you to do something that the town wouldn't allow you to do.
Right, but it
Mm.
can, under the way you're interpreting it, it can prevent you from doing something that the town says you can do.
Exactly. That's the rub. Yeah.
But see, that's,
And that's where I don't know, I'm sorry, Wayne, that's where I don't know what legal authority the town has to be able to say what an HOA can and can't do.
I don't think a lot. I was looking, at some of this, and it said that there across the country, courts have been consistent to hold that promotion of community aesthetics and property value are legitimate purpose of function of an HOA. And they can be enforced if they're reasonable and promote a substantial community interest. So what I was looking at was, I don't want to put a 20,000 watt spotlight on my house. And you guys don't like it because I've been out all night and it shines in your bedroom window. An HOA can say, you know,
Right.
if you
Yeah.
have it, you gotta turn it off at 10 o'clock or something.
Right.
Now, the town might be totally, not refer to anything about outdoor lighting at all.
Mhm.
The people in the community can say, you can't do this. The other example I looked at was, there was a community where somebody built an iron fence by his house for aesthetics, keep dogs out or whatever. So the neighbor decided to put a 2-foot stone wall with an iron fence on that. So the guy came and challenged it and said, you're now blocking my view. The HOA, the community association said, oh, we don't care. And so this guy took the association and the guy with the taller fence to court. And it took them a lot of effort, but they eventually found that, as an HOA, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the people who live in your community. So you can't do something that degrades the value of their house.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what the paragraph you read initially is actually one of the first paragraphs in this in the section of the Vermont law that says that the responsibility of the HOA is to preserve property values.
Right.
That's kind of in that sentence. Yeah, I read that too.
But again, if the HOA bylaws are written so that it excludes
Yeah,
you from subdividing in an area that could be zoned for smaller lots, effectively, you as an individual could claim, I'm not being able to maximize the value of my property. But we're getting into, I think, a very esoteric legal argument. And the question is, should we take to the select board a suggestion that they modify part of the town plan to say that HOAs should not be allowed to restrict smaller lot sizes that are within the zoning approved for that
I
area,
mean,
It's not just lot sizes, but
as a
or
practical,
house sizes too, because I got some that say
Yeah.
2,000 square feet are not allowed.
yeah.
as a practical matter, are most, does most building with an HOA going through the DRB?
I would imagine so, because it's going to be a
So,
subdivision,
probably PUDs and,
the DRB.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
if the DRB, somewhat out of the blue required, I mean, you're sort of at the mercy, it seems like the DRB could require this.
DRB can only require what the zoning regs
Yeah, they can
law
only
allows.
enforce.
They don't have any regulatory. They are an enforcement agency. They are not able, they don't have discretion on whether or not they're going to enforce one law over another.
Well, they sure did when I went through.
Well, they're saying that they're interpreting the law.
Yeah.
When they do anything.
That
But
the
it's-
HOA might not be able to.
I have the only buried electric line in Jericho Center. And
Well, GMP just came out and asked for a huge rate increase to bury all of their lines
I understand that,
across the entire state.
but I have
Alright.
the only buried electric line in Jericho Center, and that was the DRB exercise in their distortion.
so I still don't know if the town can,
Agreed.
right?
But that's something the town lawyer can tell. At least let's make them look into it.
So what about if someone makes a PUD and they say, oh, we have these little lots that are as small as that's allowed here in the front with little houses. And then we've got bigger lots with bigger houses. We don't run afoul of that because it's like how.
No,
You
see,
do- So they're looking at the total, if you've got 100 acres and you're zoned for 1 acre, you can put in 100 units.
Mhm.
Whether you do them all on quarter acre lots for 100 of them, and that leaves you with 25 acres For your quarter lots, now you've got 75 acres of open territory, which you keep. That is what a PUD is supposed to do.
Okay,
I know in my neighborhood, most lots are between a half to 3/4 of an acre. And it's zoned for 1 acre. The way we got there is because we've got 27 acres of open common land. So the average lot size, including the common land, comes into 1 acre.
wow.
But could you ever decide, say, for example, like, a PUD has like 3 acre lots in a 1 acre zone or something like that? I mean, they can develop it like that if they want to, right? I mean, so they're developing like 3 acre lots, although it's in a 1 acre zone. Can you, as one of the owners of a 3 acre lot, and if it's an HOA, can you ever subdivide anyway? Is that something that an HOA could prohibit? Like you
Right
haven't,
now they seem to.
Yes.
right? They could say you can't subdivide your land.
Well, in the same way that an HOA can tell you can't paint your house purple or pink. Or put
Right.
polka dots on it.
We like all our lots to be 3 acre and you can't subdivide your 3 acre lot.
I don't know if that would stand up in a court if you pushed it.
It's certainly in,
A
well,
lot of HOAs have something like that.
Yeah.
They do, right?
And,
And are we okay with that? I mean,
no.
no,
that's what we're talking about, right? Yeah.
But then again, if the HOA is supposed to maintain the value of people's houses. And if you move into a neighborhood with all 3 acre lots and you say, I want to split it in mine into 3 1 acre lots, it seems like. You'd have a pretty tough road home. You can't, even if the town said, yeah, you could do
that's
1
only
acre.
if you, well, I guess that's true if you believe that people who have less money than you reduce your property value. I mean, that's,
No, it's irregardless. If you have a 3 acre lot and I have a 3 acre lot and I want to take it into 3 1 acre lots, you can take me to court, right? Because you say, well, gee, I don't like it.
why would that?
But why would, I
Would
would,
that
I
be
couldn't
decided?
find out. You're saying it would reduce your property value?
No,
Like,
immaterial, like, if I put 3 houses on a 3 acre lot. After the PUD has all been approved and built and they come along later. Then somebody could easily say, oh, it blocks the view corridor. I don't want
Traffic at the
traffic, I
stoplight.
don't want all the lights on all the time.
well, you can
So-
always take people to court for stuff like that,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, it's like, if we say, no, everybody else can't be upset because after the fact, I'm trying to subdivide my land. I mean, we're starting to get into legal areas here, and I don't think we wanna, cross that line. I think what we wanna do is try to look at general things, like what we're talking about here, like, okay, if it's in the PUD and it's in the DRB phase, if someone wants to take 1 acre lots where you can do a 1/4 acre, then there's a discussion and a comment. But I think we wanna be careful about saying, here's a checklist and justify. Because that sounds like you're getting into a legal.
Well,
The
I'm
question is, can a
suggesting that.
PUD override the underlying zoning laws?
And the answer is yes, with set aside
direction.
for the average lot size or other structures. But that's the whole idea of a PUD, and you get density bonuses with them as well, which go even further if you do it properly. But from what I understand, no one wants to build anything over 9 units, because over 9 units, you get into Act 250 and it's blah, blah, blah.
But can we, I mean, like, so let's say they wanna build 3 acre lots and somebody says, I can't live unless everything's 3,000 square feet. Why can't we do something to say, yes, and that beautiful 3,000 square foot house is actually 4 little homes all connected together?
Yeah,
And it looks like everybody else.
yeah.
I think that would be like a,
So you turn it into a multi-family house.
Yeah.
The question is, 10 years later, is the person who has a single family home on 3 acres prohibited from adding an ADU?
Right.
And
So they, yes, and I think
Yeah,
you're saying the
that's-
same
yeah.
thing. You're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And that maybe we say, you can't prohibit that down the line. Or
Yeah.
would that lead to, I mean, that can also, I mean, your argument would still count. Your neighbor could still say, hey, I'm gonna sue because more traffic, blah, 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 more lights on. And are we in a position to say they can't?
I think we would want to be in a position where we would say, you shouldn't, but we don't want to get dragged in as co-defendants, if something would happen.
Well, it's a lot's gonna depend on how the HOA itself is written. Because if the HOA itself prohibits that, then you have to change the HOA.
Right.
And while we can, as the town can say this is how big of a lot you can have, minimum size lot you can have here. An HOA can add on additional restrictions
Mhm.
that are contractual between you and all the other homeowners in the HOA. So now you're under contract that says, I agree to these terms and I'll have to live with them.
Mhm.
Which goes back to, unless there is a restriction placed on what an HOA can prohibit in terms of density. Anything you do that's outside of what that HOA has when you sign that contract. Or when the developer made the contract, because everybody signs whatever the developer made, is going to be,
People are
you
requesting,
can change.
people are requesting a PUD that does not need to be granted.
Yeah.
And so the town, theoretically, I guess my question is, could the town say, we're not going to approve a PUD with these restrictions?
I think we're all circling around the same question. The question is, could there be something in the zoning regulations that says what an HOA can and cannot say?
Yeah.
And I guess the legalities would have to be checked, is it legal to say, for us to say, okay, not us, but the zoning, it wouldn't be us that gets sued, it would be the town.
Mhm.
Because the town would put it somewhere in there.
In the town plan. and it'd be the zoning.
The PUD is an incentive-based thing, and if you want to get these incentives, you have to meet these things. If
Yeah.
you're a subdivision, you have to bury if you want to get the PUD, you have to bury the electric line. I think we want to preserve, if I want to write a contract with my neighbor to never have an ADU or or another house, I think that probably, I wouldn't like it, but that probably should continue to be legal. But the town is granting additional units, or is granting a PUD with cluster development, which lowers costs. And if you want that from the town, there's a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of standards that you have to meet in order to get that PUD. And one of them, I think our
be.
question is, an HOA can't have, an HOA has to meet these standards. If you want a PUD.
No minimum square foot, or can't outlaw things like multifamily housing if you're in a zone that allows.
And you can't prohibit
multifamily.
future subdivision.
Well, the future subdivision thing, I understand that. It's a big step to not allow, to say that you can't prohibit further subdivision. I think that's a.
The reality is also that for most developments that are put in, the septic is designed on the number of bedrooms plus 2 or 5, 10% as built out. So if you
Right,
subdivide and add in another 15 bedrooms, there's no septic. So it's a nice thought. It's kind of it's a moot point if you don't have septic.
Right, but in
But
theory,
that's not our
sometime in
problem.
the next 50 years, we'll have.
And if we want infill and we want to have opportunities for that kind of thing, then why would we put something in place now that unnecessarily restricts that potential in the future? The other thing I do want to interject in here too, though, is that, I feel like the group that we talked to before,
The Wisdom House people?
no. John Green, Governor Peck.
Oh, yeah.
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 Yes, I think that this conversation and understanding what the town can do and restrictions on HOAs, if you're going to be granted PUD, is important. I also think it's helpful to remember that a lot of these folks are using boilerplate template language and not looking at it closely. And if we were to give them a sheet that says, you may want to reconsider these things, they aren't in line with our town's goals and priorities, and they are exclusionary, I'm willing to bet that that group would have cut a bunch of things out of that HOA, or would have at least considered it. And I feel like that's a really low bar
They were surprised, like the HOA, the other HOA, the ones that have the minimum square footage, that wasn't the government effect
2,000.
people.
No, I know, it was.
They were surprised when somebody at the DRB raised an objection to that. They said, well, that's the first time we've heard that kind of.
Exactly, that's exactly it. And
Yeah.
so I think that at the very least, I think that coming up with this check, we don't have to hold their feet to the fire and say, justify yourself if we don't want, but at least coming up with this checklist of these are common things in a bylaw. These are the ones that we saw if they've put in an application that we saw in your bylaws, in your HOA, that we would strongly suggest you reconsider because blah, 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 blah.
So that's one level. We could stick to that level, or we could see whether
I think
the
we should do
town,
both. 100%.
whether the town is willing to put
I
some.
think we should do both. Those are the two tracks.
I mean, what you're talking about is an advisory level.
Mhm.
Just, hey, by the way, did you know that when you signed your lease on your car, you promised that if you bring it back in bad shape, you're gonna buy a new one,
Right,
or whatever.
right.
Which
And,
is fine.
and
That
this
has
is the
no
law.
teeth to
you know,
it.
It
That
doesn't.
has no teeth.
you're right.
And things without teeth don't always get done.
Agreed.
So I'm in favor of doing that as a minimum. But as a more maximal goal,
But I mean, that's something we can turn around in a month,
oh, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
whereas this, as we all know, is gonna,
Well,
I
actually,
move that
we
we
have,
ask Fried Rice with a K and Eric to put together a question for the lawyers. And that we ask the select board to get that question answered.
yeah, I mean, sure. I would love to work on that.
Moving other people to do work for you, okay.
Yeah, we're good at that.
We're good at that, or you two are good at.
We're good at that, because
So,
I'm
well,
I'm
he's
more like
volunteering
somebody
me
who
and
likes,
to do
oh,
this.
I see, yeah.
That's what, okay,
No,
so
I
you're
didn't say-
really Friedrich, not Frederick, right?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Frederica.
that's what.
Yeah,
Friedrich.
yeah, you got it. So, but I think we do have an opportunity. I don't think it's like a pie in the sky thing, because after the town plan comes the revision of
no.
the zoning. I think we're
100%.
right there with an
Yep.
opportunity. And the town plan, if the town plan mentions infill or multifamily housing,
And planning commission is at the same time having this conversation and has these same frustrations.
really?
And so
Okay.
they are motivated to also do whatever they can legally to move this, because they're frustrated that, you know, they're wanting to make all these things and then an HOA comes in and
then there's no way to restrain developers really from doing whatever they want to do.
Developers want to maximize their profit.
Yes,
If they
of
can do it by
course. Yeah.
taking and saying, get 10-acre lots out here.
Right, and it's not gonna get any better. I mean, you know, in other places, I think there's people, I see that like in doctor Facebook groups, the really wealthy doctors, they are investing in real estate, you know, it's an investment for them now.
Mhm.
You know, which is,
Yeah, I mean,
the
I think
ethics of
so.
that are,
And then the other piece of this, so there's the bigger regulatory track, there's the part of the DRB review application process. And then there's a question about going out into the community and asking the community to look at their bylaws and
Mhm.
show them things to look for and the process by which to make changes. Does that feel like something that is worth our time and falls under the
It'd be really
purview of
helpful
this
to have a
committee?
model. to
Is
show
there a
that.
sense of suspicion here? Because I don't think anyone in my community has a copy of our HOA.
They'll find one when you decide to add an ADU.
Mhm.
They'll find
Mhm.
one.
do you meet like once a year with a HOA or something like that?
No, we all do, just, Wayne down below, contracts with the guy who mows our field out there. And then he just sends us a note and says, all right, you each owe me whatever, $100.
You don't
Yeah.
share water or sewer.
Everything's all.
I didn't even know that you had an HOA over there. I'm so glad that I.
It started out that you're probably part of it.
Oh, my God, no, no,
Yeah,
no, no,
that
no
was
way.
all one development. And since you're so good at
Thinking you're
we'll appoint you
spotless.
as the president and the secretary.
I think you weren't.
I'm gonna have to
aware
look
of
at
your
it.
HOA Until you asked.
It is unclear whether we are a district, because we share water. And those bylaws are set in stone, very clear. Only a handful of the folks in my neighborhood, and we're like 70 or 80 houses, have
72.
ever even, how many?
72.
72, have ever even
Bigger than
seen
Jericho Center.
bylaws. No one thinks that they are still in effect. And in fact, the bylaws that I have a copy of only are for the first 49 houses. They don't even include the whole, because the whole thing wasn't built yet. So it's unclear whether ours are still even.
They haven't been. I mean, I guess you're saying if they're abandoned there,
I don't
I
know.
don't know about how that,
I don't know how it works.
I
We certainly
I will
didn't get a
volunteer-
copy and didn't sign them when we bought our house. So
will volunteer the services of my brother, who's a real estate lawyer.
awesome.
I will ask him about this, but I'm pretty sure if you signed a contract on an HOA 50 years ago, it's still in force.
If I signed a contract.
If you bought a house that was under contract by the
Check
original
your
owner,
deed.
it's in your deed.
It's in my deed.
So you don't even have to have signed it. It's like from the original. I'm getting.
That's
Well,
what I
paranoid.
when you closed, they should have given you a copy of it. So
Is
There
it
were
in
so
our-
many things that they gave us.
Like if you buy a property that has an easement,
Yeah,
it's just in your deed.
Yeah. But I'm not one of the first, I mean, we don't have to talk about my house in particular. I'm not one of the first 49, so I don't even think that,
Check your deed.
check your deed.
but So
we
again-
can look that up. Right? Town, don't they have copies of all our deeds?
Yeah.
I
And they should have
was looking-
HOAs on file for everybody in the town too, because
So,
there should be an
Sure.
HOA file in the town
do
for
you
it.
know if it's the clerk or the listers?
No, I don't know.
Well, it seems like sounds like a clerky thing to me.
Because it would be, if you don't know where your HOA agreement is, it's got to be filed somewhere.
Yeah,
And yeah, the clerk would be the logical place.
my husband was pretty adamant. He's a nerd about those kind of things, so I feel, but it doesn't matter. The point is that they do exist.
Yeah.
For many of us, and there are ways of amending them. And there are things in there. As an aside, I'd like to bring this up with the DEI committee as well, but if anyone is interested from this group in following up on looking at restrictions by race or other protected groups and looking into how to do discharge covenants. I know how it's done in New York, but I don't know what it looks like in Vermont. And so that is actually, I think, a much easier process than amending a bylaw. But if anyone is interested in pursuing
You're
that, let me know.
you're talking about an HOA or some other type of agreement that would exclude groups by,
Yeah, those are all.
That language is
Wild. I don't think you change, you can, it's a historical
yeah, you
interest.
can't remove it. But you can.
you can't enforce it.
You can't enforce it, but you can create, well, in New York, it was a discharge covenant. I think maybe in Minneapolis or Minnesota too.
I mean, the only reason to do it really would be the historical point, which is not insignificant. But,
Exactly.
But I would be surprised if you'd have had that in Jericho because
Yeah.
by the mid-70s, people weren't putting those in anymore. It was the Housing Act said you can't do that
Well-
way back when. So you would have been in violation with Fair Housing Act.
But the-
Nine, I know there's plenty of,
There's not a lot of development that goes back in Jericho before
Well-
69 in terms of maybe Lafayette Place, but I don't think a lot of the rest of it that was developed here was done.
well, maybe the DEI committee will look into it and find out. Oh,
So you had the Davis family and he came, he was a black guy who was veterinarian who moved up here in like 1870.
Did he move into an HOA?
You know,
Cause that's what I'm talking about.
And he moved into a farm and he's got a enormous descendants all in Chittenden County and here, so I would be surprised if any of his descendants in 1969 were going, yeah, black, we don't want no black people around here. So I'd be astounded. You can find some.
Jericho was repopulated by white flight. I mean, that's why people came.
But that was in the
Well, these guys
seventies
were
and that
still-
was
I
different.
hope that's what I find.
But these guys were still, 1/8.
We will be a small, tiny island utopia. If that is the case.
I'd be, yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Allowed it.
It's almost 7:50. So Frederica and Eric.
I think Eric's only job, which is self-selected by now, is to check
Reach
with
out to your
his
brother.
brother.
Can we change an HOA if it has terms you don't like?
Exactly.
And the answer.
Well, can we, meaning the people who are part of the HOA, or we meaning the town of Jericho?
People who are part of the HOA can do it anytime.
They can do it
want to.
anytime. Okay,
It's probably either a majority vote or
yeah,
100, or it's either a majority, 3/4, or 100% have to vote for it.
and that would be specified in the.
That would be specified in it.
And I'll think about formulating kind of what we would potentially ask the select board, planning commission to include in future zoning laws and to see whether that's, or
Or do
I
we
think the
wanna
way you
reach out
said
to
it.
the town lawyer first?
Yeah, reach out to somebody to check, and so what I can formulate is the questions we would ask that somebody. And that could either be the select board that then reaches out to the lawyer, or the lawyer, the town lawyer.
I would.
But around that same topic, I still do believe that we are not out of order to recommend that the select board write into the town plan that HOAs should have certain features that are allowed.
Right, and then they can check the legalities of that. Yeah, same
that's
kind of
their
thing.
job.
So that's the part that I would, and it wouldn't be the town plan, it would be the zoning regs that we
Could be
want.
in the zoning regs that would
Yeah.
be true, but the town plan can also speak to it to say this is something that we as the town want to have happen.
Yeah, they can mention HOA somewhere somewhere in the town plan.
Yeah.
It could be as little as a sentence that says.
What's Sarah's last name on the planning commission?
McLeod.
McLeod, Sarah
McLeod.
McLeod.
Thank you. It might be worth, reaching out to Sarah and the two of you, talking about this, because I think you both are thinking about asking the same question.
And
And if you want an email introduction, let me know.
No, I can send her a note.
Okay,
And you're gonna talk to the town lawyer to see, or no, your brother,
Yeah, he's not the town lawyer.
if the town can force a change to an HOA. Is that-
I don't know if we would force a change to an HOA, it's just we would require new HOAs to allow higher densities or accessories or any of those things, provided they have water and sewer for it.
Down for new HOAs.
Yeah. I don't believe we, as a town of Jericho, have the ability to tell people in an existing HOA that they must change.
Mhm. And this would be for the new HA that you can't do things like require larger.
3,000
lots
square
and-
foot house.
Okay.
I have a list of some of the things that we've been mentioning. Minimum square footage.
Future conversion to multifamily housing, future
Mhm.
subdivision. These are the three I have so far.
Family, I saw in one, a minimum cost of the principal structure exclusive of the lot.
Minimum cost of the, okay,
Yeah,
That's the one for, well, the one for the foothills says the minimum, you have to spend at least,
I think it's 35,000.
in 1972,
Um,
which was a lot.
But it's not very much now. And they probably didn't adjust it for inflation.
Right, I'm just saying it was a big house then.
But for a new.
for future
For
ones, yeah.
future. restriction on
ADUs.
rentals and ADUs. Number of buildings, I don't know if we care.
Number of like structures on one lot or number of buildings in an.
Yeah, we do care because.
Number of
ADU
structures on
an
one
ADU
lot.
could be a separate structure.
If otherwise permitted by current zoning. Mhm.
Number of commercial vehicles or construction equipment. Or no, it's not number. It's no commercial vehicles or construction equipment. So my neighbor who works for, I can't remember what the heating company is. Wouldn't be able to park his
Yeah, I think
vehicle.
that's a good one.
Yep.
I mean, we're talking, that's a DEI.
Architectural committee has to review and approve plans for any building, fence or wall. I don't know.
That's kind of standard in HOAs.
Yeah,
Okay. Only single family dwellings. We've kind of covered that. We've seen various
If you want to go for something that's really overboard, look at some of the Disney celebration development down in Florida for what you can do.
Oh, God.
Your mailbox must be no more than 4 feet 6 inches tall, and if it's this and you can't paint your house any other color than white, and your grass can never be more than 2.5 inches high and must be cut every. But it can get remarkably prescriptive.
Yes.
It's like that sounds a little like character-based zoning
Exactly.
language.
Which this plan says we want 2 more of in other village centers.
so how did you?
The most recent, is this the most recent draft?
Yeah, this is volume 3. It says we're fortunate to have
Riverside?
Riverside, and we want in 2 more village centers.
Really?
So wait,
That's one
where did
thing.
you find it on the website? Because I saw some
It's
slide.
really, it's very hard to find.
Oh, okay, so it's there. right?
It's there.
Okay.
I found it hard to find.
I saw these slides and the biggest thing that struck me was they have all these houses with no parking.
I have been really grateful for the quality of our town website, but I'm getting a little tired of the fact that you have to go 3 to, like, the department is in one place, the planning department is one place, the planning commission is one place, and the planning minutes are in another place.
And where was this under the planning?
I'll see if I can find it for you, Wayne.
All right. This is a
So-
good list.
I'm wondering if somebody would be willing to draft a letter that kind of outlines these things that we would potentially include to a DRB applicant that just kind of brings to their attention. I don't know, think through what that process would look like, but just draft up. I've got the list. It sounds like you have it too.
Like a flyer.
Draft up a letter, flyer, something that we can review.
So I think less is more. In other words, instead of having some big long thing that no one's going to really
I
read.
disagree.
It is 1 page with 10
Yeah,
bullet points.
I mean, they're only listed 10 things.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think if we pick the ones that are the high value ones
Mhm.
and don't get into.
We don't have that many yet.
I don't
Yeah.
care about grass and I mean,
No,
yes, I
yeah.
think that those things are excluded, but whatever, what we're talking about is really.
Yeah.
I agree, is a different level. Anyway, would somebody be willing to draft that up if I send you this list?
My work's getting a little less.
Are you sure, Wayne? You volunteered for things and then your work,
No.
okay,
You know what we should add to the list
What?
is like something a little more general that says you can't include racist and exclusionary language. Can you do something like general like that, or is that?
Isn't that
Yeah,
already
I've got-
prohibited under Fair Housing Act?
Yeah,
Mhm.
should be, right?
So-
Which goes back to, can you be, yeah. So that might, maybe that's overkill because it's already covered.
Yeah.
It's like having an equal rights amendment when you already have equal rights, except sometimes you need it.
except sometimes you need it.
Reminder.
It's, I don't know, I feel like when you're this close
This
to
is-
history,
this is
it's
tough,
worth.
Yeah. Yes.
And then within it is the Riverside.
I have something that
What is
says like,
that?
often boilerplate
Ah,
language used in
I
HOA
think it's
covenants
got
uses
something like
exclusionary language that
that,
restricts
form-based
economic and
code thing.
demographic
That's what I was
diversity.
looking- I was looking.
This language goes against the goals and priorities
So-
specified in Jericho's 2024 town plan and declaration of.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
right? All right, I'm gonna send this to you then, Wayne.
I mean,
Okay.
it's the same with ADUs. I think ADUs are explicitly. I mean, it's one of the things in the state law that it says you can't prohibit ADUs.
Each one of those is
so-
a different section, so you've got this section, which is.
The town can't prohibit it. You and I can write it, if you were my neighbor, you and I can write a contract saying that you and I agree never to build an ADU. I don't
But
think,
you know, the difference between that and an HOA is that. People are somewhat more coerced to sign an HOA. It's not.
I believe the town can prevent an AOA. I believe the town can say you can't have your POD unless your HOA meets these conditions.
Hmm. But do you think two people can still say,
Sure, you and I can make a contract saying we're both gonna paint our houses purple and keep them purple for the rest of our lives.
That's an agreement between two independent parties,
Yeah.
which is, the other one is a community agreement that everybody in the community signs to.
okay,
And
Like joining a
and you
community.
also- And a community that needs, I mean, a community could probably sign an agreement among each other.
Yeah.
But what we're saying is you can't have your PUD and have that agreement.
But again, the agreement you and Frederica might make between each other will not survive unless you make it a deed amendment to your property. So when Frederica sells her house or you sell your house, the new neighbor may say, it's not my agreement.
Right,
No,
I understand.
so that's different, whereas an HOA
Yeah.
survives with the deed.
Yeah, I'm just saying that there are circumstances under which independent parties could make an agreement that is tougher than the zoning.
I think he's saying that because I was saying you can't disallow ADUs ever, and so he was saying that there's cases when you can, if you make a contract with your neighbor not to have one, then.
And your neighbor amends their deed to say that.
Well, yeah, just for the time that you're living there.
Right.
Uniform common interest ownership act.
That's just gonna be future, right? Because there's tons of HOAs now that I'm sure that's prohibited and we can't do anything about that at this point.
Yeah, I'm wondering,
I don't think we can. We have to have the HOAs amend it themselves.
Right.
I
Like
was
I can't have a
wondering,
clothesline. I'd like to,
You can't have a
But-
clothesline?
No, we can't either.
let alone an ADU, I mean.
Yeah, but that's
I
the
can't
thing.
have a
No,
clothesline.
I still don't think
Yeah.
that I think that's invalid. I mean, there's things that are in HOAs that are unenforceable. And for example, the ADU thing, I would think is unenforceable because of the state law. It's not the same as having two people sign it. If she's in an an existing HOA that in way back said you can't have ADUs,
I think it is.
it's
Right.
against.
Still
the
enforced,
state.
it's still enforced.
They can enforce it among each other. The town doesn't
Right,
enforce
right,
it.
right,
But she and her neighbors have agreed to
yeah.
among each other.
But then if I decided I want an ADU over my garage, then the state law would come and say, I can do that.
I don't know.
No, because you signed a contract when you bought the house. It says you won't do that,
Oh, okay, got it.
With your neighbors, the contract, your agreement is with the neighbors.
not
Yeah.
with the state.
Oh, yeah.
No, I don't
So
think so. I
I'm
think that's not
wondering
true,
if
and that's a
you
core question I
Would
have.
be willing to
Okay,
take the same
But then
information. that I
let's get an
sent
answer
Wayne
to that.
Hmm.
And think about putting it together in a format for folks to look into their own HOAs.
So in the,
Yeah, like what would the audience be?
The audience would be maybe a front porch forum post or maybe a whatever
Okay,
that's
okay.
like, hey,
Hey,
are you interested in the housing crisis and the housing problem? Are you in an HOA? Have you looked at your bylaws? There may be things in there that are exclusionary. For example, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
Take a look.
And
It's in a
then.
book.
Alright.
Well,
Oh my God.
let's go beyond just saying maybe exclusionary, saying there may be things in there that you disagree with.
I
Yeah,
love that.
Or
yeah.
restrictions on what you can and cannot do that. And
Awesome.
remind people that they can amend their HOA.
mhm. That, yeah, should be the takeaway, right?
I think it'd be great if there was, if one were to go ahead, Eric, and make that change. As a demonstration.
Well, there's only, not all of us live in HOAs, but myself,
Right.
SJ, you do,
could change
Wayne, you
yours.
do,
I don't, I maintain
Stacy,
that I
you
do
do.
not live on an HOA.
that you know of.
I think I would notice.
Resistance is futile.
And this covers a lot of property.
Remember the board?
It does cover a lot of properties.
I mean, your development is half the size of Jericho Center.
Well, if you add in where Stacy is next door to us, we are bigger.
Yeah.
We're two separate developments that we share one road.
We're like a development that has two separate sets of rules.
Yeah. And two separate septic systems.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down. to.
That's why you have two separate sets
Yes,
of rules.
yes.
Yeah.
But, so I think in our case.
They were developed by different people.
We're small, and so everyone kind of knew each other, and so if we put up a clothesline, nobody cares. But I think you guys are in a big development, right?
Are you allowed to add septic for your own use?
I don't think I have soils that would support it.
Composting.
I don't know. I haven't looked, but I've
Like,
got a community septic that I've been paying into for 30 years, so when I go,
Wanted an added ADU.
such a rebel.
yeah, I just don't know if there'd be,
Narrative.
if there was soils, I don't know if there's anything that would restrict me from doing that.
Goes from there to my house.
But that becomes an incredibly large investment.
Infill is, that's the
Yeah.
thing. It's like this idea that that everybody, yeah. it's,
All right, so while we're on this brainstorming kick, let's shift into DRB applicant review and response. So we've talked about this a little bit a couple of times, again, the HOA thing. But also the idea of a one pager that's, things that we would urge you to consider or maybe some resources or some information or something. But something like, consider adding septic now for potential future ADU or something.
Well, this is not the DRB stuff. This is anybody applying because someone just building a single family. I think,
Fair,
is there anything that's any different between?
true.
Who do we want, who are we talking
I
to?
think it should be anybody.
Would we
building-
be talking to the DRB or the?
No.
I
Well,
think-
I mean, we could be, but
I think this is, I think it's a friendly letter that anybody who's applying for housing. For a subdivision or a housing permit gets. That says, just want to make sure that you have the right to add a mother-in-law apartment, you have, these are the rights that you have. We encourage you to maybe anticipate. This would be a whole lot more feasible if you add septic capacity now. And
did you
and
know,
if you would like to contact us for, to have a conversation. Just call.
did you know that whatever the zone specific minimums are?
Yeah, here's a
Well, the
digest.
specific minimums don't prevent you from putting in an ADU based on the new rules that have come out.
No, but it might be nice to know that you could do a fourplex, you could do a triplex, you could subdivide to quarter acres, you could.
So who I question who we're talking to when we say that.
We're talking anybody who's thinking about building a house or doing a subdivision.
People don't know about the regulatory changes that went through last year, that they can do
But they could build a
triplexes,
duplex. People
and
don't know that.
people don't know that.
I was talking to Eric Johnson last night. He didn't know what his property was zoned at.
Yeah, not surprised.
Right,
People
so
don't.
I mean, just really kind of explain it to people, and so like, okay, if you're building on half an acre and you build a house right smack in the middle.
Yeah.
You're really hurting your future options, that if you're building a house on a half acre. If you put it like a little bit to one side and put your driveway kind of this way, you're preserving the opportunity to subdivide. You do have the right to build an ADU later on. So maybe think ahead about kind of where you put your driveway and how you orient the house
Well, that's-
to make that possible in the future.
But question, so thus far, I've been kind of following the DRB meetings a little bit, and thus far, all I've seen is like people come to do like PUDs and subdivisions, and the people that come, they're like professionals, they're not necessarily the people that are paying for it. So they're already, it would seem to me that they're already a step ahead in kind of knowing the rules.
Right, but
You think there's people that just come in front of the DRB that
Again,
No, I think there's-
about
I think there are people
those
who-
guys who like had no
the
idea.
Governor Peck people?
Yeah. And I also think that sorry, Chuck, I also think that the developers or the professionals who are coming in are, you know, doing their job and doing their what they're expert in, and they may just be presenting this one option to the owners, the applicants. And
also-
even Chris was saying just the other day that he got someone came in to get a permit. And he suggested to them, you know, you could subdivide instead of doing whatever it is.
So it's not
you're
just the
doing. And they were
DRB.
like, oh my God.
It's not just the DRB then that
right,
we're,
there's a lot of housing that
Exactly.
gets built that never goes in front of the DRB.
right, so we should like think about who we're kind of addressing
Yeah.
and, yeah, not just the DRB.
Yeah,
Basically give something to Chris Flynn to give to people.
yeah.
But it also could be that, some of the I think it's a really good point. It is developers going to DRB, which is an indication of how complex the whole deal is. And their imagination may be a little bit limited, just based on their own experience and.
And they don't just come to
I mean,
Jericho.
I would think that it could be a selling attribute. It'd be easier to sell a lot to someone where you really think that you've thought through everything that they could do with that lot, like in the future. I mean, it's a little bit of a tangent, but reading the house sale ads for new houses in Jericho in the 1970s, it was remarkable to me how many of them were sold unfinished. That it was first floor is finished, kitchen, bath, living room, bedroom. Upstairs, room for 2 more bedrooms and a bath, you know, sort of finish on your own. You know, it was like you were.
That's what I did.
You were anticipating the future use of the house. And today, DRB, they're like totally finished products, anticipating kind of no more change. And if.
Well, the thing is, from my observations, people in their 30s are not as handy with tools as our generation was. So we were likely, my house was totally unfinished upstairs and I built the whole thing. Brothers did the same thing. But nowadays I see people in their late 20s and 30s that want starter homes, they want it all done.
I understand. I guess it was more like a sort of a parallel track.
Yeah.
So right now, someone might say, I'm interested, it is interesting, the idea of buying a house that has an ADU already sort of laid out for when I'm ready to do it,
Oh, well,
and a driveway and a septic system, like that's anticipating the future use of the house. But to me, as someone maybe who's not handy, might consider that to be attractive. I was okay. I'll put the
Yeah,
house
now
in,
that
when I'm
ADUs
ready,
are
the
allowed
ADU's all set, and
Yeah.
somebody's thought ahead to make sure that
Might wanna have a
the
bigger
cost
septic.
of the ADU is not exorbitant, because the septic's already there, the driveway's already laid out. The electric and the plumbing is all kind of set up for it. You're all ready to go.
So-
I would consider that to be a selling attribute for a house that you
Not to
could
put a
make that case
damper
to
on
a
this
developer.
direction you're going in, Chuck, but we are, if I'm not mistaken, the Affordable Housing Committee. And telling a developer that they should plan when they put something in for an ADU at some point in the future. Unless I'm really mistaken about how housing costs go, that new house just became less affordable or affordable to a smaller share of the population because the developer put in extra septic, put in extra driveway, put in extra everything, which added to the cost of the house.
Yeah, but it's like prevention, right? It pays off in the end. It's gonna make it
In the
more-
end, we
actually,
all
the
die,
net
but
co-
that's not
No,
the issue.
but you could say that down the road, it saves cost than actually creating the ADU.
The
So if I'm
incremental,
coming in at the top of my bracket to afford a house. And the mortgage payment is all I can do. And you just popped an ADU,
Well, you can
development-
choose not to do it if you're currently in a position where you
What
can.
the cost here is of,
Well,
of
yeah,
adding,
that's what-
having a paragraph on a piece of paper that we hand to somebody,
well,
like.
no, but the
if
piece of
it's-
paper isn't it, you have to build. For Chuck's
don't
vision, you have to have built the septic.
Yeah, you
already.
want, yeah, you wanna,
You're not gonna go in and
So-
add
so-
a
so
septic
the-
system 2
If
years.
I'm coming to Jericho. When I came here 10 years ago and I was building instead of buying, or I was buying a lot with a house with a builder and it was already coming. And someone said to me, hey, if you do this now, then in the future, knowing the situation of my family members, I absolutely would have said, oh my God, thank you. And put the house over here and done that, or at least considered the septic, like that's information that I would have found useful. And who cares if it's only useful to one person? It doesn't put us
I
out.
mean, the incremental cost.
The incremental cost.
Yeah.
The incremental cost of a fifth of a septic system going from 3 to 4 bedrooms is minimal. It's sand. And
Well, tank has. to be-
And the tank too, the tank has to be sized appropriately, the
Right,
amount
and
of
that's-
land you have
right,
has to be
that's-
sized.
it's it's $1 a gallon, it's $125. It just isn't that much, it's so much cheaper to do it then, plus your leach field is likely to last longer.
All I can say is, I'll just use my own example. When I bought my house 30 years ago, I couldn't get the size garage I wanted because the extra cost was going to make it unaffordable to me. I couldn't finish the basement that I wanted because the extra cost made it unaffordable to me. I couldn't add the amount of square footage I want because the extra cost is. Now, I did put in a separate bathroom downstairs so that my mother-in-law could live there. Never made it, but that's a different story.
And there will never be an ADU on your house.
But because I could barely afford it
But you
when I
could
got.
barely afford it, but the Governor Pet folks who came in here and sat down hadn't even considered any of this until we suggested it to them. And so I don't understand what the problem is with having a list of a couple of things that maybe this applies to this person or this applies to that person, or it sparks an idea over here and 5 other people throw it out.
I think it's just what you're all trying to figure out is what's affordable. And you're saying if adding those things makes it less affordable to some people, then that's counter to our mission, right?
That is.
I have
exactly
no
what I'm saying.
idea sitting here how much more that would cost to say. Have that extra infrastructure, so
Yeah.
it's,
If you're buying what most people buy,
Yeah.
maximum house they can.
no, I know, but is it like
Right.
$1,000?
But so no, this
Or is
is
it $10,000 more?
$10,000 more easy,
No, it's not.
yeah.
No, it's not.
Like to put in a larger septic?
Yeah,
To go from 3 bedrooms to 4 bedrooms is not very much.
Yeah, but that's
Basic.
not what we're,
Yes, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're talking about. We're saying, if you're building a 3-bedroom house,
like how much is that potential cost?
price out the difference between a 3-bedroom and a 4-bedroom septic system.
And a separate bathroom,
Pardon?
because and a separate bathroom for the ADU and a separate
But
kitchen.
you're not building that yet.
Right, so how much is the potential cost? I think that's what I'm sitting. here
well, but
wondering
so
about.
what I'm
It's
thinking is we're
frustrating.
not, the people that are gonna take that suggestion and actually say, oh, that's a great idea, I'm gonna do that, are the people that are higher income. So we're essentially gonna get the higher income people to do something that's gonna allow them to create affordable housing down the line. Hey, win-win.
And if people can't afford it, they won't do it. But it could save you $10,000 if you decide to build an ADU down the road. You can spend an extra, I don't know what, $750 now, $1,000 now, and save yourself $10,000 if you ever decide to add an ADU.
So you're saying put it as a menu option when you.
Yeah.
It's an
your
idea.
house.
Yeah.
Are
we're
we
not mandating it.
focused on getting people who can afford all of that and an ADU someday versus someone who might only be able to afford living or renting in the ADU? I think is what I'm wondering.
What do you?
Yeah, I think we're trying to give like advice to
Mhm.
anybody.
If nobody, we're not forcing anybody to build a bigger septic system. We're just saying. If you have an aging parent, if you anticipate this in the, think about this in the future. And if you're thinking about, if an ADU is possibly in your future, you can save a hell of a lot of money by buying a little, digging a little bigger hole, adding a little extra sand. And spending another $150 to enlarge your tank.
Another thing that falls under this category might be a subdivision or a PUD that comes in, and we would suggest consider doing a community design septic system instead of individual septic systems. That may be more cost effective. It means that you may be able to handle, I don't know, future infill down the road, or adding an ADU or something like that, adding another well, or like, we don't have to just be talking about making a bigger septic, although I realize the example I picked is a septic example. But what kinds of ideas, suggestions, if you were sitting at the DRB, or if you were at Chris's desk upstairs and you were seeing applications for permits or sketch plans coming across your desk, and you were worried about this, what are the kinds of things that you'd love to be able to suggest to people?
Just to
If you're
clarify,
building a house.
does Chris see only subdivisions or does he see single family?
He
Everything.
sees single family.
Yeah,
he does a
everything.
permit.
He sees ADUs, he sees
The
everything.
DRB doesn't see
You
single
wrote
family.
the permit for my
Correct.
woodshed. If you're building a house on a lot that's larger than the underlying zoning requirement, consider positioning the house. If you want to preserve the option to subdivide later, consider positioning the house so that that's possible.
I don't know the answer to this related question, but what percentage of new builds in Jericho are single houses, not part of an HOA or other subdivision,
A PUD, not part of a PUD.
not part of a PUD of any type, or not subject to subdivision regs? I don't know the number. My suspicion is it's pretty small at this point.
I don't know, just any house on a 10-acre zone.
Newly built. Yeah, how many?
How many newly built 10-acre zones are we putting in now? Not much. I mean, everybody's building 3 acres or less.
There's some lots over there, like Walnut Lane or whatever they call it.
Black Walnut, yeah, those are mostly duplexes.
Well, no,
house
there's
building.
like if
It's
you
just
look for things for sale, that's the only thing that comes up in Jericho is these two single house lots.
Yeah, the Black Walnut's on a community septic.
They are on the community.
Yep.
Richard, you don't have to raise your hand.
Just talk.
No, so I live over here on Black Walnut. The properties that you're talking about are it's just the lots that are for sale right now. Talking about the HOAs and everything. So we have on our road, I believe there are 4 total HOAs for this road alone. There are 3 separate ones, and then there's a master HOA
For
So-
Black Walnut or for Packard?
for Black Walnut.
Cheapers.
It
Yeah.
was built in
so
3 stages.
yeah,
4 stages.
and that doesn't include the homes at the top of the hill. There are 2, the bug bees and the wolves on the top of the hill are standalone homes. They're not part of either of the HOAs.
Okay.
They're not, are they part of your septic as well? Or are they individual septics?
No, they're individual. But
What about
as
the
far
new
as
ones that are going up at the far end?
those will be individual septics up there too, from my understanding. Yeah.
I have to see where this
If you look at the Sunnyview, Pinehurst,
starboard.
heard about all these places, the houses are built right in the absolute middle.
I know,
Yeah.
my husband and I we're gonna have to move in order to put in the okay,
A lot of what determines that is the 100 feet from the
Boundary lines.
boundary lines
Setbacks.
to the septic, and then there's we have rules in Jericho and a lot of other places
Only 20 feet.
that the septic has to be a certain tank has to be a certain distance from the house. And I believe the leach field has to be a certain distance from the house.
Right, but the house has, the boundary on the house is only 20 feet from the boundary line. You could have the house doesn't have to be in the exact center of a half acre lot.
Right,
Ours
but
is
now you
right up
need the
there.
septic and the well, that's usually what people do is if they build a house,
You know,
septic's on this side, wells on that side.
not that we have
I understand.
So it doesn't put the house in the middle.
I understand that it was convenient, but that if someone put a value on not putting it in the center, it would be possible in some cases.
I think what you're mentioning though would be great when we get our town septic. That definitely if that's Riverside, if they ever build it, you know, looking at later expansion of these houses would be a great idea.
That's such a lovely segue.
Yeah.
I mean, we can keep talking about this a little bit longer, or we can move on to the next topic.
What's the next topic?
Well, the next topic is I want to introduce, and maybe take cover after I do, but introduce the Riverside form-based code.
Wait, did we skip the liaison?
Nope, that's after.
Okay.
So what time is it? 8:22. Okay, so I'm sure everybody's aware, but just to summarize, Riverside, Underhill Flats, that area has form-based code. Form-based code, in theory, is supposed to make building easier, faster, more predictable. The code that we ended up with seems to not be easier, faster, more predictable and lead to quick building, let's say. And so one of the next things, my understanding that the planning commission is going to tackle once that they're done with the town plan will be to revise and work with David White, the consultant, to revise the Riverside form-based code. And Frederica and Chuck have been looking at it for a little while and are going to help us all form some recommendations to make sure that we have some input on that process. And so I just wanted to take a few minutes to just familiarize everybody with the fact that this exists, what it looks like, what some of the obvious issues are. And then either maybe in November, I guess it's up to you both and where you're both at, November or the December meeting, we can actually get into it a little bit and figure out what our recommendations for the planning commission and for David White would be.
What does the town plan say about that? Anything yet?
The town plan says we like it and we want to do one for Jericho Center and Jericho Corner.
Yeah, but probably not this kind.
Yes.
The town plan does say that we will like character-based or form-based zoning. It does not speak to whether we like the specific example that's in place in Riverside.
That's not what it says.
So it doesn't kind of like, it
says
doesn't
we're
probably
fortunate
doesn't.
to have it. Is what it
Because
says.
we're fortunate to have 3 centers and the opportunity for a 4th one.
So we're not talking about the town plan.
I believe you will find it on page 26 of volume 1, Building Vibrant Centers. Today, these 4 village growth centers are and must increasingly play the role in the economic, cultural, and residential core, blah, blah, blah. Centerpiece of our community, the focal point of these 3 centers.
So,
You know,
so anyway, we haven't been like the planning, the town plan doesn't speak to the details, sounds like.
Correct.
The town plan doesn't speak to the details, so we can, so that it makes still makes sense to comment on the details.
Yes. They haven't touched the, I mean,
They haven't touched it,
it's.
And
that
but
is
they
the
want to
next-
touch
that
it,
is their
right?
ne- Yes,
Yeah.
their next plan is to overhaul the form-based code. And so I want to make sure that we know what we would like to advocate for when they're ready to do that overhaul.
Yeah, I mean, having read into it, like when Chuck and I were initially looking at the zoning regs, and I didn't get that deep into it, but it sounded like basically from what I was reading that the best solution would be to start from scratch to simplify it. So going through it line by line and saying we don't like this or we don't like that, I don't think, if you look at it, I don't think that makes sense, but I can formulate that more carefully after looking at it some more. But that was my impression, that it was just, basically you need a new consultant, essentially. It's too, like, every detail is too detailed and involved. And if we're going line by line and saying, I don't like the sentence or the section on the trees because it goes through like which species of trees you can plant and stuff. I would just say nix the
It's
whole
town
thing.
plan
and start
says Jericho
over.
is fortunate to have created separate and more detailed master plans for the Riverside Village and Commercial District.
Yeah,
And are very important for providing a closer analysis of the limits and opportunities of future development.
but I
That's a
do
pretty
think we know
enthusiastic
that
endorsement.
like people that we've talked to, like Susan, are not fans of the way it is right now,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I don't,
No one on the planning commission is
Yeah.
enthusiastic with the current zoning regs.
Yeah.
as
And
written.
I agree with you that it is not worth anyone's time. And
Right, that's
luckily,
what I'm
it's
saying.
not our time. If that's the road that they go, then I'm glad it's them and not us, going
Yeah.
line by line.
So then I misunderstood what you were looking for.
that's what a revision is.
No, I thought you were looking for,
my
like, for-
vision is not line by line.
no, I thought that you were looking for us to kind of provide detailed feedback on which parts of it we think make sense and which don't, or.
Yeah. But I don't think that means line by line.
Mhm.
And I say that
Okay.
for two reasons. One, because I think it's a waste of our time, and two, because I
Yeah.
think that the planning commission feels that way too.
Okay,
So underscoring the places, the big take home messages. That are important, like, for example, the distinction
the division into
between
two, yeah,
character district 3 and character
Mhm.
district 4,
Mhm.
and the difference in the densities and the housing types available in each of those make absolutely no sense to me, and I think is something that we should push back on.
Where are
Could I
these?
just like to come in at a little bit higher view.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
say, as one of the few people on any of these committees that has made a personal commitment to village life. My observation over 38 years is that people who live in the 10-acre zone see the village centers as their personal Lego sets to sort of play around and to design, and somehow that they know better. That somehow they know better about the village center. And like, why do we begin with the place that it's the village centers that need form-based code? I mean, the mess of it has been outside the village centers. If you're gonna have form-based code because you want something different, like why are we looking at just the village centers for form-based code? We're looking at that because people in the 10-acre zone and the 3-acre zone want to work on stuff that doesn't affect them. And why focus, why do this? I mean, I don't see exactly,
The
I
why
don't
is
see what the
because
specific need is. And
I think they
because
were
there is
supposed to make it easier.
huge developmental potential, and they want to be able
to restrict it and control it.
No,
Just as their Lego
to
set.
make it faster and easier.
So they're gonna hire a planner, okay, which is that's the number one mistake. Is we're gonna have someone who's gonna recreate their master's thesis.
I think that,
Designing people's lives for
I
them,
think that would,
playing with Legos,
yeah,
telling people how big their porches need to be.
yeah, and we don't
I
wanna,
mean,
yeah,
I did some renovations in my house. I put in a new window. If I was in the village, in the Riverside area, I would have 23 regulations on where I could have put that window. I could not have put the window in where I wanted to if I had lived there and if people had been paying attention. I renovated my porch. I did that on my own. I decided how deep I wanted it to be. If I'm building a store, I don't need the town telling me that the ceiling has to be 12 feet high. In the first floor of my store. I want to be able to put a window or not in my store. You know, and how come there's never any regulations in the 10-acre zone on what people's houses look like? There's like total freedom for people who have money and who are in control. And they want to redesign the village centers where they don't live to this incredible high degree and leave themselves exempt for any kind of scrutiny kind of in that direction. I mean, when I added this house for my mother, the town doubled the cost with this fiddling, with really unnecessary rules. And why is it that,
Yeah. So what
that
I've heard, and I don't know how this is applicable, what I've heard is that this is what you draw, this is the conclusion you draw from looking at what's on the page there in the Riverside district. What I've heard is that the original intent of this form-based code is actually to make it less ruly and less like less detailed.
we're going to write more rules to make it less rules.
To make it more streamlined, that people can really get through the developmental review more in a much more streamlined way. That's what I keep hearing, that somehow that's gonna be the outcome of it. And certainly that's not what's on the page there, but I think that was the
And
purpose
we
of
have,
it.
you know, a decade
There's just like,
of saying, we're gonna restrict everybody, we're gonna restrict where people live because we're gonna have infill. At the same time, we establish laws that make infill more difficult. I mean,
I guess what we would have to see is an example of form-based zoning that works and that does make things easier, because that's what I keep hearing. Developers love that because it's much easier for them.
developers don't love it, planners.
No, I heard that developers love it because they have a less of a hard time getting through the DRB.
Let's take
So we-
how much he loves it.
We need like an example of where it works.
We already hired a consultant to do this.
Yeah, we know what
Okay.
came of that. Yeah, so we kind of need an example of what people mean when they say it actually makes it easier.
It should be get rid of it and then come up with, you know, if someone has an idea, let's apply it to everywhere. Why is it that a town center should have specific laws on the size of a porch that don't apply to everybody in town?
I agree, and I believe that we should advocate that not be part of it. And
All
this-
housing, all design issues should apply to everybody in town. They should apply to the people who are enforcing them on the village center.
I agree.
That would be a good point to make if you wanted to make that point.
And this I often, when I'm sitting in this chair, find myself in a role of pushing something forward that I don't personally 100% stand behind. The decision that has been made is that we're going to overhaul the form-based code instead of getting rid of it entirely. That the goal is I hear everything that you're saying, Chuck, and you and I agree
Then we should recommend they get rid of it.
95%.
Then we should recommend they get rid of it.
Oh, okay, and then they don't. And so do we participate in trying to make it?
Yeah, we do.
The
but
most
we make the
inclusive
recommendation
we
that they get rid
can.
of it. Our
Or
recommendation
do we
was that it
just
be sunsetted.
upset?
That didn't
and
appear in the town plan, so they did
then
not
what
accept that recommendation.
They did not accept that recommendation.
So we should continue to make that recommendation that it should be sunsetted.
We-
Are you
need to
opposed to
prepare.
the specificity of the
Yeah,
character-based
yeah.
zoning?
Okay.
Or are you opposed to the fact that it's a zoning that is trying to structure that neighborhood to be an effective neighborhood? Is it the character that they're saying, or is it that they're trying to say, we would like this to be a neighborhood with trees, with houses, with places where people can walk? What is that objective?
All of that is true in the other two village centers. You don't need that. If you want to plant trees, plant trees. If you want to put sidewalks in, put sidewalks in. Give us a plan on the sidewalks. But don't
Yeah.
specify. housing.
So it's the specificity that it provides of, you must have an oak tree here and a maple tree there and your front porch. But what about just saying, if you want to build in this area, your buildings need to have a variety of front facing pieces, you need to have
No.
windows here in the
I
on the
object to
front.
that. I object to
Object to that.
because those are
Okay.
aesthetic considerations
And
designed to make people who live in a 10-acre zone happy when they drive through.
so is there an aesthetic that you would say should not be allowed in the town centers?
I think that whatever restrictions
So
are,
pink polka dots and no windows on the front are okay by you?
it should apply, whatever the restrictions are, should apply to every house in Jericho. Like, we are not your personal Lego set.
Yeah, but again, the idea of zoning is that to protect people's investment in their houses. So, I mean, if I'm gonna put some slapdash, hut in there and with no heat or water and say it's my business and, is that, and then I'm gonna rent it to somebody? I mean,
But make that, well then, why is it any different in the village center than anywhere else?
There's a guy with teepee. If you go down,
If you want to,
on the interstate there outside of Riverside, there's a guy with
Yeah, outside of
teepee
Richmond,
over
guys,
by the
yeah.
pond there.
He's been there for years.
so what?
He also had
I
a
mean,
camel at one.
Make it apply to everywhere. Make it, if you're gonna tell people how big their porch has to be and where they put their window. Make that the case everywhere. And the plan here says we want houses built next to the road. We don't want long driveways.
Well, this, again, this is not, this is in a neighborhood where we're trying to get compact development. It's virtually impossible to have compact development and long driveways.
I understand that.
So,
But
why is
the
it wrong?
the aesthetics, okay, you're saying we want the houses in the village centers to look a certain way. I'm saying the town plan says we no longer want long driveways, which means that the houses on Nashville Road and
This is
what-
not
what are-
relevant to Nashville Road. This is only relevant to the
I
Riverside.
understand that. Listen to me. If the aesthetic concerns for the houses built in the rural area are going to become are legitimate because they're going to be built next to the road. That's what the plan says they should be, with short driveways on Nashville Road. New houses on Nashville Road will be as visible to the public as the ones in Riverside. Don't tell me what size porch I need. Don't tell me where to put my windows. If I want to build a round house, I'm going to build a round house. If I want to build a house that faces the sun, I'm going to build a house that faces the sun. It's like, we are not
So-
your museum.
But going back to affordable housing. How can we say that this affects us as a affordable housing committee?
Make really small lot sizes. I mean, there's lot sizes in Essex Junction that are,
They have 16
4,000
acres
square
in
feet.
parts of those.
So, I mean,
That's a zoning.
what comment can we make as affordable housing committee to this form-based zoning thing? That are not based on your objections, because that's a whole different thing, but just pertaining to affordable housing. What are the things we want?
All lot sizes.
So we
Really
would,
small lot sizes.
we would encourage
Put the
if you do,
select board in charge of sewer instead of the planning commission.
like, as far as this form-based zoning is, if they're gonna put form-based zoning, and then from affordable housing perspective, what would we wanna have in there?
I think it's the same zoning considerations that we have for all the village centers and for the rest of the town.
Because I'm trying to think about what as an affordable housing committee we would say to this.
The village centers were built
I
without.
mean, you could
form-based-
say that the complexity in the current form-based code sounds like it's gonna be expensive apart from all the other objections, but I don't know whether that's even the truth. But I guess our point would be that if you build a form-based code that doesn't somehow become exclusionary, right? That it doesn't, that the lot sizes aren't too large, and that you don't mandate single-family housing too close to the.
So this is, I mean,
Yeah.
so my
Yeah, that's it.
big take homes are that there shouldn't be a distinction, but there shouldn't be two districts, District 3 and District 4.
Because how is that
Because
relevant?
they are so, it is such a small area, and
And that'll,
character District 3 is like it doesn't
Where
make
is
any
that?
sense.
This isn't,
It-
So-
District
because,
3 is
and that would
different
affect
density.
affordable housing because that would restrict multifamily dwellings or something.
And then,
Too
and
much of
then
the,
Currently, you're not allowed to build birdhouses for sale with hand tools,
the
and the majority of that.
and that would be another
Character
point that
district-
affects affordable
Character
housing.
District 3 doesn't allow for housing of various types. Also doesn't allow, I can't remember if it
Like
said anything about
trades
rentals
and
and
stuff,
trades,
and
but
rentals.
it doesn't
So
allow.
we need to kind of stay focused on
multiplexes.
that piece of it, yeah.
There are parking requirements all over the place, which
You gotta have that.
you don't actually, and
low
it's
income people
zoning for
need
better,
their
zoning for better districts
That's-
is very, or
rich
for better
people.
neighborhoods is very clear about
I
recommendations
know,
for
and it's
parking
ill-informed.
requirements.
If any of them ever lived in a place with
Um,
on-street parking, I have, let me tell you. It's hell, and you can't get to work, you can't get a place to park, and if we're speaking for affordable housing. All these people making 30, 40, 60,000 a year, they've got to drive, whether it's
No
Global
one is
Foundries, the
suggesting that
hospital.
they don't and that they
And
can.
they need a place to park
And
their
they
car
need
when
a
they come
place to
home.
And the parking requirements that are in there are too burdensome, I would argue. And the differences, just essentially the differences between the two districts and the density, why we would have a village center being medium density instead of one of the most dense areas in town doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So they're bigger, broader things than focusing on the minutia,
So
which
they
isn't
get
our,
too-
I
they-
don't think it's worth our
They get too
time.
low
Other than
density
a
too
sentence
quickly,
that just
Yeah.
says like, hey, we're not.
yeah. But we just have to
We're
kind of
not-
keep our eye on the
Agreed.
topic.
Okay, it's 8:42, so I'm gonna move on to liaison updates.
I got something for you.
I love it.
All right, news from the DRB.
Yeah, give it to me.
So I love those DRB shows that they have. They have them all on recorded like ours is. And the topic, the last meeting that really was substantial was actually, I think, the August meeting where the Davis family came to the DRB. Have you heard about this? So the Davis, and this is relevant to us because, so the Davis family, as you all know, are like agriculture. They're like our, like one remaining cattle farmer. I don't know if one of the few, sorry.
It's dairy.
Dairy cattle, dairy farmers. And so they want to subdivide their land and they figured out that the only way to do it the way they want to do it is with a PUD. Because the way they want to subdivide it, they have about 150 acres. And what they want to do is they want to have 5-acre lot for their own farmhouse, a 2-acre lot, and the rest as the third lot, basically. And the only way they could do that 2-acre lot and the 5-acre lot, because they're in the 10-acre zone, they couldn't just subdivide it like that. They had to make a PUD. So that's the first interesting thing.
What
And
do
that-
they want the 2-acre lot for?
Okay, this is the second
Okay,
interesting
sorry.
thing.
I'm
The second
in.
interesting thing is, because this concerns us, is this is the reason. I'll read you the letter. This is the letter from their daughter. To whom it may concern, my name is Clarissa Mond and I grew up on Silly Hill Road on the Davis farm. Over the past 4 years, my husband Camden and I have made over 20 strong house offers to try to buy our first home in Chittenden County. It is important for Camden and I to be close to family as well as our jobs. I am a nurse in the emergency department and Camden is a firefighter for the city of Burlington. After many failed house buying attempts, Camden and I began to explore the idea of building. It has always been my dream to purchase a piece of my parents' farm in order to retire there. I never imagined needing to explore this idea in my mid-20s simply because we cannot buy an already existing home due to the massive housing crisis this country is facing. So they were unable to buy a home. At this time, we are requesting a 2-acre subdivision from my parents' property in order to build a small 2-bedroom home. In the future, we will plan to add on to this home as our family grows. Thank you for your consideration. So that is why they want a 2-acre lot. So I thought that was really interesting. So anyway, it came before the DRB. The DRB got itself all tied up into knots about the the large piece. And another 20-acre piece that the family was trying to kind of cut off the whole deal and kind of put to the side that they might want to develop down the line. And so that's where it stands now. The reason it's complicated is because it has something to do with the Conservation Commission. They wanted to conserve the 110 acres. And then the question is it common land or is it a lot? And if it's a lot, don't you have and you have the 20-acre thing, don't you have 4? And if you have 4 in a PUD, then it's not a minor subdivision, it's a major subdivision. So that's where they kind of, they got all mixed up, and now they have to kind of ask their experts and they'll come back. And they were gonna, the next hearing, I think, is tomorrow.
Did they have to disclose the 20-acre thing? Like, were they,
Yeah, so
you know, like, is that one of those, like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, because it
So-
may not happen for 50 years.
it's on the plat. The plat shows the 5-acre, the 2-acre, then the 110-acre, and then up in the corner, it shows 20 acres that I think they were just trying to kind of exclude from this whole deal. And I don't know, that's kind of a subdivision in its own right.
Right.
So I don't know how they're gonna handle that, but that kind of led to some complications.
Fascinating.
Yeah, the whole thing is super
Were
interesting.
they
And the
aware
difference
of
from-
that they were making permanent decisions?
Yes, they're in talks with the Conservation Commission about what to do about their agricultural land. And so they're being very thoughtful about what's gonna happen. And they actually talked about what's gonna happen in the future to their 5 acres where the houses are. They were saying, so can we put, one of the questions, the unresolved questions was, can we put farm worker housing on the 110-acre lot that we're going to carve out as common land and or conserved land? Which are 2 different questions.
Yeah,
Can you do it if it's common land?
and it's
Or can you
different.
do it if it's conserved land? So that's another.
it's working.
Understand the permanence of what they're doing. And the only way I could add my mother's house was if I resurveyed my land and created a PUD that anticipated all future development. So in order to build my mother's house, I ended up getting permits for 4 duplexes for my backyard, because that was my the property's last chance.
Yeah,
And
Oh.
it really struck me that when
So you wouldn't be able to subdivide again after,
in order to build my mother's house, I had to make a permanent, long-term decision about how all my land was gonna be used, just to build this house.
Huh.
Now, it was not, and so I just said, well,
Sure.
put in as many duplexes as you can, so I have a PUD for. And it was ridiculous how much what it cost me, but I had to create a PUD to add my mother's house, but I was very much impressed with the idea that this was the last revision for the long-term land use of 7 acres in the middle of Jericho Center. And I hope they appreciate the significance of the decisions they're making, that if they're saying, well, we're gonna accumulate the 10-acre lots in order to do this, that they need to make a decision on the future use of all the land that's included in that PUD now, because they will be prevented from making changes.
is that part of the PUD?
Yeah, you're making a
It's
commitment.
Okay. So if you were just subdividing, you wouldn't be under that same commitment.
Right.
It's a
but the reason they didn't subdivide is because of
the
the
10
size
acre,
of the
so
lots.
the only way they can do, and this is the same with you, the only way.
Well, they
you
could
can
have
do
given
it
10
is
acres to,
PUD.
they could have given 10 acres to their daughter. I don't know why they didn't do that. Cause
But
they have
they're
enough
also-
land.
They're putting the farmland that's still being used as farmland into a conservation district, and by doing that, I think they didn't have 10 acres left without taking some of the prime farmland out of the conservation district.
Yeah, but there's so much.
Mm.
There's like
Private farming.
100+ acres.
Yes, but they might feel they need 100+ acres to manage the farm as they have it structured.
One reason that I heard also, that might be true, one reason that I heard that's related to that is the overlays.
Mhm.
There's overlays like,
Oh,
and-
land and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, that you have to consider, can't get too close to this or that boundary.
The whole house is
And,
really.
and they did it in a way that nothing conflicts with overlays, so it would be
Mhm.
super simple.
So. Their home.
Yeah,
house
they're-
is-
they're in a
their home
repairing
house is
overlay and,
Really,
you know,
really big, and the house that they're building is ADU size, I mean, could they?
It's not, on
Makes-
it's on a separate, it's too far away to.
It's really far away, the 2-acre lot is very far away from the 5-acre lot,
Oh, okay,
it's on the other end of their property.
oh,
It's a couple thousand feet away kind of thing.
okay,
And then there's,
Yeah, but they, I mean, they probably wanna own and build equity and,
right.
you know, if they're
In
renting from their
anticipation
parents, it's
of
not an ADU.
sane zoning laws,
Yeah,
they could build an ADU in anticipation of being.
well,
able to
what the
separate.
2-acre people saying, what the daughter is saying that,
This is why 10-acre zoning breaks up farming, this is.
in the
what-
future, we will plan to add on to this house as our family grows.
yeah.
So they wanna plan for that. They
Yeah.
wanna be sure that they lay that out right.
And we want those kids here.
This
when they
is an
come.
example that David White needs to hear. This is how a 10-acre
Well,
zone breaks up farms.
Well, they managed to do it without any 10-acre
Hmm.
plots. They have a
But it hasn't
5-acre, they have a 2-acre, and then
It
they have a
hasn't happened yet. It's the thing that they. We just said that, well, why not just give them 10 acres? Well, that's what has, so for, if it was a non-family member and the farmer needed to raise some money. He would be breaking off a 10-acre lot.
Well, if you look at the land, you know, that big map they had, it seemed like there were like swales and stuff, and that what they were
Mhm.
trying to do is break out land that was buildable. And avoided some of these areas where they would needed to avoid.
Yeah, they broke out at the 20-acre thing is kind of at the very end of
Yeah.
it.
But the 2 acre, you know, you had the 5 acres and that seemed like it was a big distance, and the 2 acre was.
Yeah.
over- Kind of over here, and there was something in the middle there, and they had the circles for, they had to put a new septic system in for the old house, right?
Yeah, they were talking about the
Yeah.
septic, yeah.
So there was a lot of complexity that kind of, I think they tried to thread the needle on it as far as the size of the lots and stuff, so.
The septic, actually, there's some border that overlaps with 110-acre. The septic kind of goes into that a little bit.
For the little house.
Any other liaison, it's 8:53, any other liaison updates? All right, I'm gonna move us on to other business and our November agenda. I wanted to bring your attention, you said that their next meeting is tomorrow night at the DRB?
Yeah, unless it was in
Wasn't on the
September.
DRB website.
Unless it was in September because the September recording didn't work.
Website says they have all the
broken.
writings on it from last September. It's already up on the webpage.
From what?
The DRB comments on that development are already on the webpage.
From September? Because the September minutes weren't there yesterday and the recording wasn't
Was.
working.
I saw them today, the minutes.
Okay,
It's only one page.
So
yeah,
tomorrow,
it was that long.
It's,
I think that was only 3 minutes, so I think they continued it until tomorrow, but we'll see. I'll look.
It's a 34-page document that has the maps, it has red.
Oh, yeah, no, that was the original one. That's part of, like, that was the plats, they talked about it.
No,
for an
no,
hour.
it has comments in red that are.
Yes,
from the
yeah.
DRB.
Yeah, no, but that was, the comments in red were there with the original thing. They were there with the original thing. That was all from the first meeting.
Okay.
But the decision hasn't, like, they didn't come to a decision in that meeting. There were too many questions and especially on the large plot of land. So to be continued, but the most interesting piece is already, I think,
that is, yeah. So tomorrow night, the Harvest Crossing folks are doing a Q&A at 7 p.m. at the United Church of Underhill. We don't need to be there, but I've been following that work. It's interesting, and if I can, I might go just because I'm interested to hear what community questions, what it's like in the room. I sent in our email, the housing convening, so CCRPC is doing a housing convening for all local housing committees, planning commissions and the like. Those meetings, if you've never been to one, are actually often really informative and worth attending if you can. I sent you the information. That's October 30th. There'll be presentations on the Striving for Equity project, which supports local housing committees and promotes avenues for citizen housing advocacy to increase the amount inclusive, affordable housing that meets local housing needs. But they'll also be talking about the Building Homes Together and the CCRPC housing dashboard. And then what I find the most useful is their municipal roundtable, where a representative from all of the towns in Chittenden County talk about what they've been doing on the affordable housing front. It's a nice place to get ideas and find resources and other people to reach out to.
Is that during the day or in the
I
evening?
think it's in the evening.
Okay.
I don't know why I didn't grab the time. That was it for other business. Before I move on to the November agenda, anything else that anyone wants to plug?
Well, this is an ongoing idea that maybe I agree to do something and then can't remember, but I feel like both our committee and the planning commission don't have a good understanding of wastewater treatment. I learned a lot just listening to Wayne a couple meetings ago about it. Just seems like
Maybe we should
now that the planning commission is in charge of the wastewater system, that it's just a body of knowledge that we don't have.
Who would be in charge of it other than planning commission? Select board?
Select board.
They'd have to delegate somebody, right?
Essentially, the select board delegates it to the planning commission. The planning commission is pushing it forward because there are people on the planning commission, myself included, who say this has to get done, full stop.
Okay.
And the select board, basically, at this point, staff for the select board is Linda.
And, okay,
And she's kind of full up.
well, I'm gonna be retired at the beginning of December, if they need to stick to fetch it, and I won't be working 50 odd hours a week. Designing computer.
Yeah.
This septic is, the wastewater system is not, it's not on track to get built.
Well, apparently with the lead consultant got sick, had some type of a thing where she was out for several months. So the delivery was supposed to have been by now. I believe the new delivery date is sometime in December. But they are going to identify locations for on-site septic, community septic, that would be for the village centers and for the commercial district.
So there would be pumping stations, because if you look at.
Pumping or gravity fed.
Okay. 'Cause
So
for
are these
Riverside,
gonna be town run or district run?
That has not been decided.
Right,
So they would just,
there's so
So
many things that
locations
need to be
at this
happening right now.
Well, they do, they all need to happen, but without the locations and the recommendations from the wastewater consultant who says, this is the size you need. These are the places that are suitable. Everything else is secondary. Yeah, you decide you want a car. Okay, am I gonna go cross country or am I just gonna go around town? Two different kinds of car. We need to figure out what the sizing is and where it's gonna locate before we can jump into, let's go bond for something.
I understand that, but does the town have an understanding of the difference between the town operated systems and district systems? That if they're gonna be a district system in any of the three, I mean, I don't think you need to know the design of the location to make that's basically a policy decision.
Well, that would be
And-
true if we're making separate districts, but if we just put everything in at one of the preferred locations, which is up near Browns River, where that nice field is between Browns Trace and Route 15, which apparently has great soil for it, then that would be a single location for the entire town. If, on the other hand, it's going to be 3 separate locations, then a district makes sense. We don't have the answer to that, so the question you're asking is premature.
I would take a motion to adjourn.
Second,
I can't make the motion. Somebody, oh, hold on, wait. Hi, Dave.
So,
You're muted.
Yeah, could I make one comment and?
You
one-
absolutely may.
Yeah, I'll repeat something I've said before. Is in a past statewide housing conference, I attended a panel discussion. It was the Winooski City Manager, 2 or 3 Winooski City staff, people involved with construction and zoning, and the president of the construction company that built Casavant Outlook on Route 15 in Winooski. That has about 30 units. So the point they made was that form-based code saved several months' time in that project. My takeaway from that is that particular form-based code worked, and other form-based codes may not work. So the phrase form-based code can't be considered a positive or a negative. So it just depends. And I think in Winooski, they were comparing it to some fairly complex stuff. And I think in the discussions tonight, it was being compared with having not having so much complexity in the form-based code. So they're 2 different things. So anyway, the phrase form-based code shouldn't be used to promote something or to denigrate something. We got to know what's in the code.
Dave, that was Winooski. What was the development?
Casavant Outlook,
Possible.
it's the national park or natural area that's right when you cross the tracks going out of. Route
Oh,
15.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thousands of buildings right next to it.
Take a look
So
at it.
my question is to Railroad Circle. It was purchased for affordable housing. 2 sub questions. What has this committee done with it? And is there any other Jericho town committee or entity that's asked us to do something? Kind of, it just seems a disconnect to have it be purchased for affordable housing and then the Affordable Housing Committee doesn't seem to be involved. That can't be discussed tonight, but I'd be interested in knowing.
I think it's a great point.
The Community Development Corporation is heading that. I, as a liaison, attend all of their meetings. And at the moment, they are information gathering. So I've given them 3 different contacts to reach out to talk to. I think they've dug the test pits for septic to understand septic capacity. They've met with Green Mountain Habitat for Humanity and are talking to, like I said, I gave them 3 other people to talk to. I don't know whether they followed up on that or not. They canceled their last meeting, their last 2 meetings. They're not in a hurry.
I think it's right where it needs to be. I think it's we have a select board member who's on it, who's gaining experience. I think I was going to see how it's possible to get something like this done without the executive capacity. The select board is learning kind of what the issues are. It's a pretty self-contained project. I really don't think they need our supervision.
As an aside, John Abbott and I have been in touch with the folks that are in charge of the Harvest Crossing project. We went to their celebration. Like I said, I'm hoping to go again tomorrow night. One of the reasons for doing that is because they kind of have a map for what the steps are, who to talk to. We've met with the project managers that they're working with, both at the finance agency, at the Housing and Conservation Board, and at Green Mountain Habitat. And are just, making connections, building rapport, but also kind of following very closely all the steps that they're taking, the order in which they're taking them, and trying to learn from their mistakes. So that's not formally happening at meetings, but John and I are making an effort to do that.
Yeah, it's not, if the development corp is spearheading this and working on it, then, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
If they're listening to you.
Well, I don't know if they're listening to me, but I'm talking. Did I have a motion to adjourn?
You had a second, but I can try and.
Oh.
You want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right, Wayne will make a motion.
Does
Frederica,
Federico's
go
Premature.
premature second count for that?
Right. I'm gonna have to say it now every single time I write out your name.
Not allowed.
Oh, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone else want to say
Aye.
later? Okay.